Welcome, everyone. Let's bow in. So tonight we're continuing on with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Francesca Fremantle's commentary to it. And we'll see how this goes. I'm finding it rather difficult, the commentary, more so than the Book of the Dead itself. So, she's making an introduction here about deity yoga. And what deity yoga basically devolves into two things. One is visualizing a deity, might be Vajrayogini, could be Chakrasamvara, there are lots of them. And the other, that's the first part of it, and it's called the creation stage of deity yoga. And you have to visualize, it might be Vajrayogini. You could Google her and see her. She's has many different aspects, but the one that we usually work with in deity yoga, she's 16 years old, mostly naked, dancing, bright red in flames, and she represents extreme prajna, extreme transcendent non-dual knowledge. And we visualize ourselves as Vajrayogini, and we become her. That's the creation stage. The completion stage is that we dissolve the visualization and we rest in what you could call Sogchen, pure, formless awareness, pure, clear awareness. So I'm going to start tonight by talking about these basic concepts of pure awareness, which underlie this whole chapter. The Trikaya, the three bodies of the Buddha, Tri-Kaya. Kaya is Sanskrit is a word that's used for the body of the Buddha. And there are three bodies of the Buddha. There is his Nirmanakaya, which is usually translated as manifestation body, like you could call a living teacher a Nirmanakaya. And in fact, we do, because the Tibetan for Nirmanakaya is Tulku. And you refer to teachers that you know as Tulkus. And that means you're referring to them as Nirmanakayas, as presentation bodies of the Buddha. The ultimate form of the ultimate Kaya is the Dharmakaya. And this means absolute reality. And it has primarily two main characteristics. The Dharmakaya, first of all, is that it applies to where we are now. We're sitting in the Dharmakaya. We're sitting in all three Kayas. But the Dharmakaya refers to the fact that what we're sitting in the midst of does not exist as a thing. It's a constant, ever-changing presentation of the six knowables of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, bodily sensations, and mind, mental events. All of these things appearing and disappearing in the instant. Michael, you look puzzled. Something you want to say? Oh, Liz Macchiorletti. I don't know if we know her.
Not familiar to me.
Huh?
Not familiar to me either.
I think you better send her a message saying that she needs
Will
to
do.
meet us. So the Dharmakaya is absolute reality. It's this, in which nothing has any existence of its own. It's just a constant, it's like a movie. We're sitting in the midst of it, a constant presentation. Appearing in the instant, and as soon as it appears, it's already disappearing, changing, morphing. You can't find anything that endures for any period of time in the Dharmakaya. So it's pure emptiness. The other aspect of the Dharmakaya, which really affects the other two Kayas, the Nirmanakaya and the Sambhogakaya, is that while nothing has any true existence, everything which appears, this gesture of the hand, this sound of the voice, does so luminously. The term in Tibetan is ursel, O with an umlaut S-E-L. In Sanskrit, it's prabhasra. And what it means is that this phenomenal world, which doesn't exist in any real sense, is a constant presentation, and that presentation is luminous, beautiful, meaningful, constantly communicating itself to us through forms, through sounds, through smells, through all of our senses and our minds. So those are the two main characteristics of reality. Emptiness, meaning nothing has any true being, and luminosity, meaning that all of these things which have no true being nonetheless communicate vividly to us. They manifest themselves in these three bodies. The Dharmakaya is the absolute body, in which nothing has any true existence. It's emptiness. The fact that while it has no true existence, it nonetheless communicates all these things, like these words that are coming out of my mouth, this gesture, the color of this sweater, all of that is Sambhogakaya, the true communication body of the Buddha. And the fact that all of these things that are communicating to us have a presence like this person sitting here, who will get up and go at some point when we finish this class. That is Nirmanakaya, manifestation body of the Buddha. So these three aspects, the emptiness of reality, its vivid communication quality, and the fact that it has a presence which comes and goes. Dharmakaya, Dharma body of the Buddha, Sambhogakaya, which is often translated as enjoyment body of the Buddha, and Nirmanakaya, which is often translated as manifestation body of the Buddha. These are the three aspects. So these teachings of death start out on this page where we're starting now. I don't know what page it is in the text. I'm just looking at my notes. There were 3 dorjes, I think. Do you remember the page number, Michael? In Francesca's text? I think I've got it here.
We're starting on page 232, I think.
That sounds right. Yes, 232. And she starts by saying that the entire series of dissolutions, which is happening right now, this is all dissolving, culminate in the experience of luminosity. And it's the very process that the yogin or yogini undergoes during the completion stage of deity yoga, but without the death of the body. In other words, when you practice this yoga, completion and creation and completion stage, this is what you're practicing. You're bringing Vajrayogini into being and dissolving her. Now, when you do this, there are stages to the quality of life and death that we need to understand. The human body, such as it is, another one of these things that doesn't exist but nonetheless appears, is primarily composed of channels which carry the wind of communication, you might say, and of life, and chakras, energy centers. And these channels, which are called nadis, in Tibetan that's sa, T-S-A, or R-T-S-A, but in Sanskrit it's nadis, connect these chakras. And there are 4 main chakras, one in the head, up here, one in the throat, one in the heart, in the middle of the chest, and one 4 finger breadths below the navel. Those are the 4 main chakras. Meanwhile, there are chakras throughout your body literally in the thousands of varying sizes. But these four are large, and they're the main ones. And they're connected by these channels, nadis, which carry energies. The energies are called bindus. They're like little drops. And there are three main types of bindus that reside in different, are concentrated more in different parts of the body. There is the red bindu of passion. There is the gray bindu of aggression. And there is the black bindu of stupidity or ignorance. And what happens is that at death, the gray bindu of aggression comes down from the chakra in your head and resides in the heart chakra. The red bindu of passion, desire, arises from the chakra 4 finger breadths below the navel and comes up and joins the gray bindu in the heart. And those two then unite with the black bindu. When they do, there is an opportunity for you to, the sense of ego, to completely dissolve. And that becomes enlightenment. Now, for most people, this doesn't happen. And the consciousness, instead of dissolving into reality, for most people, the consciousness at death leaves the heart center and goes into different realms. There are two main realms that it goes into. The first, well, there are three stages to this. These are the bardos of dying. The first one is the bardo of death, which you've read about in this chapter, in which the body and the mind are shutting down. The second has to do with the movement of the consciousness from the heart here in one of two ways. Either it goes right back into the ultimate heart center and you achieve enlightenment, or it moves out of your physical heart, the heart chakra here in the center of your chest, and goes into the realm of the Dharmadhatu. And when it does that, it begins to take a neurotic form, a form of believing in I. And so this is what most of us will experience at death. The movement of these three bindus united into the new sense of I, the new sense of other. I'm going to read a little bit from here. She says, the entire series of dissolutions culminating in the experience of luminosity, this is what we begin to see the world as luminous, is the very process that the yogin or yogini undergoes during the completion stage of deity yoga, but without the death of the body. It can also happen with the death of the body. It is accomplished by making prana enter the avaduti, that's this central channel, remain there and dissolve, and by making the red and white bindus unite with the black and move up and down within it and exit it. As a result, the meditator experiences increasingly profound realizations of emptiness combined with increasingly intense sensations of luminosity or bliss, because that luminosity is in fact blissful. During the completion stage, that's when we dissolve our minds into reality. This vision of things as they truly are is actually brought about and becomes a living reality. We enter the world of the real. The full realization of luminosity is the attainment of Dharmakaya. It is paralleled by death and dreamless sleep, in both of which we enter the Dharmakaya state, but we don't recognize it. We do this when we die, and we do this when we go to sleep in dreams. But for those who can enter it profoundly and retain stability, it is far more than a state of simple peace, clarity, joy, and absence of conceptual thought, although it includes all of that. It is completely unified with the mind of all the Buddhas, all the awakened beings of all time and space. It is the totality of the awakened state. So by practicing deity yoga, by practicing visualizing ourselves as Chakrasamvara or Vajrayogini or whatever other deity your teacher may give you, and dissolving that into reality, this is a path to enlightenment, to awakening. He says, it is like the sun being revealed as clouds melt away. It is naked awareness, the natural basic state of mind, she says, when all concept of self has completely dissolved. In liberation through hearing, it corresponds to the final moment of the bardo of dying. The Dharmakaya is the formless aspect, the source of all phenomena. Just as the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya, which are the two aspects of form, arise out of the Dharmakaya, so the subtle and coarse bodies appear from the very indestructible Bindu. And this is what happens here with us. I'm just debating how much of this to do. Finally, when the meditator arises from samadhi, that's this pure meditation state, he or she returns to everyday life with a physical body that has been purified and transmuted, corresponding to the Nirmanakaya. This is something that we can all accomplish if we practice this way. During the experiences of death, bardo, and rebirth, we are presented with the opportunity to awaken into the corresponding sphere of enlightenment. That is why it is so important to understand the principle of the Trikaya in relation to liberation through hearing. Liberation through hearing is the real title of the Book of the Dead. And so it's terribly important to understand these three principles: Dharmakaya, Nirmanakaya, and Sambhogakaya, the Trikaya. And how does one do this? He says, first, the practitioner should have received the practical oral instructions on recognizing and resting in the true ultimate nature of reality. This cannot be learned from books, but must be pointed out directly by the guru in a meeting of the minds. And in fact, this is the real meaning of a spiritual teacher, of a guru. The guru is the person who points out to you the Trikaya, or the Dharmakaya mainly, this pure, unadulterated awareness of mind. That is the main job of a true teacher. And it's something that Trungpa Rinpoche did all the time, and other teachers too. Dilgo Kensei, it's what they did all their lives. So when death comes, practitioners of the highest capacity who have gained enough depth and stability in their practice of resting in the nature of mind, because it's been pointed out to them, they will not need any assistance, but will simply merge their consciousness with the Dharmakaya, because it's been pointed out, they can do it. And each one of you deserves this pointing out. So then he quotes from the text, Now when the bardo of dying is dawning upon me, I will abandon grasping attachment in the old desiring mind. None of that has anything to do with this mind of enlightenment. I will enter undistracted the clear essence of the instructions and transfer into the space of unborn self-awareness. As I leave this conditioned body of flesh and blood, I will know it to be a transitory illusion. And this is the statement of a person who has received this kind of pointing out instruction from the Guru. Many, many people received it from Trungpa Rinpoche and from other teachers and are still receiving it from other teachers to this day. He says, imprisoned as we are in the perception of three-dimensional space, we naturally think of the mind, spirit, or consciousness as leaving the body at death and reappearing somewhere else. Yet in reality, it has no dimension, the mind and the body. It's all completely a mental creation. As the Guhya Samaj Tantra says, mind dwells in space and space dwells nowhere. So all of this that we're sitting in the middle of right now is in nowhere. We think of it as being in a place. I'm sitting in my house. I'm going to go down and have dinner, whatever it might be. And yet the whole thing is basically space, constantly changing, constantly in the perception of the individual who views it. He says, we don't see this because on the coarse level, duality is overwhelmingly powerful. I and you, this chair, this room, this sound. We feel that mind and body are separate. Self and others are separate. And the individual and his or her environment are separate. But as our awareness of the more subtle levels increases, the unity of mind and body and the interrelationship of the inner and outer worlds becomes more apparent. And then here's the clincher. On the very subtle level, there is no distinction at all. Mind and body are one, and that oneness embraces the whole of existence. I think I'm going to stop here and just open this up for questions, discussion, complaints. This is as profound as it gets. You want to add anything, Michael?
Just thinking at the beginning part where she talks about creation and completion stage practice, that basically the idea in visualization is there's a process you go through to create a visualization and to dissolve it at the end. And this is meant to parallel birth and death in that ultimately, even though we experience things as a physical materiality because of our attachment to the bodies, that ultimately it's all an expression of mind. And that mind itself is ultimately empty. Every visualization practice begins with a mantra that basically says, a rough translation in English would be, all things are empty, I myself am empty. Meaning that there's no solid, ongoing ego or to anything. No solid, unchanged self to anything.
Right. The difference in practice is that you choose what you're going to dissolve into.
Yes.
In daily life, we just do it ineluctably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other people. Karen Sue, do you have anything? Questions, complaints?
No, just keep going.
Dan?
I
So they-
think that's what Karen said. Yeah, yeah. Just because there are no comments doesn't mean it's not profound. It's great to listen to. Yeah.
Okay, now he's talking about the practice called transference. The Tibetan for this is Powa, spelled transliterated into Roman letters as P-H-O-W-A, Powa. Then this is really the transformation of consciousness into a different type of awareness with new perceptions. It's done deliberately as opposed to choicelessly at death, and it's controlled by the force of karma. There are many different Powa practices. Depending on the view of reality the practitioner has been able to reach and maintain during this life. However, if when the time comes we are open enough to recognize luminosity as our own nature, then we shall become fully awakened, whichever method we have used. Our consciousness will be transformed into whatever level we are capable of maintaining. This is transformation or transference of consciousness. I want to say that the most simple and well-known, there are many, many types of transference, Powa. But the one that's most simple, famous, and well-known is transference into the realm of Amitabha, the Buddha of compassion, who lives in his heaven, or if you want to call it that, his realm called Sukhavati, which means the land of bliss in Sanskrit. And what one does is when you're taught this practice, you're taught you can practice it, like trying to do it, but you never take it all the way. Because if you do, you will eject your consciousness. It ejects through the Brahmaranda, which is the same as the fontanelle, top of your head. And if you do actually eject it while you're alive, you'll die, because you've ejected your consciousness. So when you're learning how to do this, you take it all the way to the stage of just about to project the consciousness out of the Brahmaranda, but don't do it. Okay? This is the simplest form of Powa, of transference. There are many different kinds, and most famous. And the idea is that you're transferring yourself into becoming a disciple, as it were, of Amitabha in his pure land. And as that, you are much more likely and capable and closer to the achievement of enlightenment. This is why one practices transference. This is not necessarily the main practice. You can do deity yoga, where you become the deity. You can do Dzogchen practice, where you basically learn how to dwell in the realm of reality. There are many different ways, but one of the simpler ways for people who can't achieve these more difficult ways is Powa, transference of consciousness. Any questions about Powa yet? There are teachers around. There's one in Denver who teaches Powa, and you have to find them. He says, when the time comes, if we are open enough to recognize luminosity as our own nature, then we shall become fully awakened, whichever method we have used. Our consciousness will be transformed into whatever level we are capable of maintaining. The transference of Powa is really the transformation of consciousness into a different type of awareness with new perceptions. It's an enlightened awareness, or a semi-enlightened awareness. We're seeing the world through the veil of heavens. In general, all death is a kind of transference, since it is a transformation from one mode of consciousness to the other. The difference is that in the practice of transference, one deliberately chooses one's new condition of existence. One is in control of the process, instead of being controlled by the forces of karma. There are many different transference practices, depending on the view of reality the practitioner has been able to reach and maintain during this life. They can lead one to the awakened state in any of its three aspects: Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, or Nirmanakaya. They are all just skillful means. If, when the time comes, we are open enough to recognize luminosity as our own nature, then we shall become fully awakened. I'll read that again. If, when the time comes, we are open enough to recognize the luminosity, which goes along with emptiness. You can't have just emptiness without luminosity, and vice versa. So if we're able to recognize the luminosity as our own nature, then we shall become fully awakened, whichever method we have used. If we cannot attain that, then our consciousness will be transformed into whatever level we are capable of maintaining. So the root verses of the Bardo of Dying describe, "Now, when the Bardo of Dying is dawning upon me, I will abandon grasping, attachment, and the all-desiring mind." This is what we need to do. All of us need to be preparing for this, because death is approaching for many of us. Many of us. I'm 80. Who's older than that in this room? Anybody? We have some people in our Sangha who are over 80. Barry's over 80, for sure. He says, "Now when the Bardo of Dying is dawning upon me, I will abandon grasping, attachment, and the all-desiring mind, enter undistracted the clear essence of the instructions, and transfer into the space of unborn self-awareness." This is the Dharmakaya. It is pure, unborn awareness. He's calling it self-awareness. She is. "As I leave this conditioned body of flesh and blood, I will know it to have been a transitory illusion." The transference that this verse refers to is the supreme method of Dharmakaya transference. There is no concept of the mind going anywhere. There is nothing to be transferred and nobody to transfer it. So there is no need for imagery of any sort to assist the practice. The dying person simply relaxes in the primordial nature of mind, just as he or she has been accustomed to during this life. So let's all of us just take a moment, bring our awareness completely just right here. There's nothing to it. It's not a special awareness. It's not controlled. We're just coming back to this, to where we already are. This is the core practice, to come back to here and now. It's very simple. You're sitting there thinking, what's for lunch, what's for dinner, or who do I like, or who do I don't like? And then suddenly you awake and you say, oh, I've been lost in thought, and here you are, right now, looking at your computer screen, feeling your bottom on the cushion now that I mention it, listening to this voice, seeing this goofy guy in your screen. And this is the core practice of awakening, both in creation and completion practice and in Dzogchen, which goes beyond creation and completion. With regard to Poa, he says, in this kind of transference practice, she says, Poa, even though one has not learned how to work with the subtle body, one vividly imagines one's entire consciousness and energy concentrated in a single point at the heart, in the center of your chest here. You make it shoot up through the crown of the head into the heart of Amitabha in his pure land of Sukhavati. This must be practiced under the guidance of an experienced teacher until the time of death, when it is put into actual effect, if we're going to practice Poa. We must believe that we can and do actually enter Amitabha's presence through the power of his love, If that thought is strong enough during the last moments before death, it cuts through the karmic chain of cause and effect about I, and me and my welfare. That chain that would otherwise impel us toward rebirth in one of the 6 realms of samsara: God realm, jealous God realm, human realm, animal realm, hungry ghost realm, or hell realm. For this practice to be successful, one needs to have complete trust and confidence in Abhidhamma and then in one's teacher, without any trace of doubt or disturbance. This kind of simple, direct faith actually links up to the Dzogchen attitude that everything is already accomplished and perfect. And this is an attitude that all of us need to cultivate increasingly. There is absolutely no sense of one's own effort or one's own attainment. This is it. You're already here. This is Dzogchen, the complete perfection. And to the extent that one doubts that, then it's like you're wanting something more. And that feeling of wanting something more is suffering. And it absents you, takes you away from this awareness of the present moment, this awareness of your life, because you're lost in a dream of accomplishment. We let that go. It's complete, utter acceptance for now, this, here, whatever each one of us has, and a willingness to live it, to work for it. I'm going to open it up to discussion again. We may not finish this tonight. We may come back to this again next week. Anybody want to say anything? Michael, do you have anything?
Just looking at the part where she says, in this Amitabha, there's still a perception of duality. Enlightenment is seen as outside oneself in the person of Amitabha, to whom one feels total gratitude and devotion. Yet there is an underlying intuition of oneness and of our own awakened nature. And that's because at some point there's a realization that both are the display of mind. In other words, the sense of oneself, the sense of Amitabha, the sense of a Pure Land is all one's mind. But again, it's a sense of mind that's much vaster, unbounded than how we ordinarily think of our mind. It's not mind as how we habitually think of it. It's a much vaster, unbounded sense of what mind is.
Are these like almost like mental tools, in other words, that are like to help? Is that because I'm kind of getting the sense that it is all mental states. Am I oversimplifying it by calling them like tools to help you?
You're in a mental state right now. This is it. It's just one after the next. You can't get out of them.
Yeah, I don't know if this will help or not, but I'm remembering some talk by Trungpa Rinpoche where he says we need a reference point to get beyond reference point. And that's sort of how these things work. Another way you could say it is a way of directing the energy of mind so that mind recognizes itself.
Yeah.
So in one sense, yes, in a relative sense, I guess you could call them tools, but really they're practices. And they're training the mind.
Yeah, but it's basically you're fighting fire with fire kind of idea.
Something like that, I guess.
Something like that?
I think without actually doing the practices, it's kind of hard to fully get what they mean. But it's really it's letting go.
Yeah. Okay.
Opening up.
I mean, we're sitting here thinking, how can I get it right? What do I have to do to make it better, to make it perfect, according to the teachings? That thought is the problem. You let it go. You're already here. That is the whole thing that they're teaching us, especially in the Dzogchen teachings, the Great Perfection. We're all already here. And what keeps us on the path instead of being realized is the thought, one day I'll get it. One day I'll have real awareness, enlightened mind. That thought, it keeps you on the perpetual journey towards the goal that you never reach. Wow.
Thank you. So I suppose the question I have, since earlier you've spoken and Francesca has spoken about doing deity yoga, creation and completion practices, and finding a teacher, a guru, to have a meeting of minds. So what, I guess it's a progression. First, I'm in the process of choosing my teacher, Sigarkantra Rinpoche. Then what happens is a teacher like him or Onion Rinpoche going to go through a litany of Nundro, Dzogchen, pointing out before I'm qualified to do these practices? Or do I just let it happen organically? You know, it's like I want a roadmap, and I know that's a problem.
No, that's okay.
Trying to get it right. But I'm looking forward to having a personal interchange with Rinpoche to say, okay, now what do I do? And since at my age, time is running out, I need direction. Am I don't know, am I articulating
Yeah,
sense?
you are.
Okay, thank you. Is there a question in that?
Somewhere. I think that the whole point is that we have to begin to develop confidence that this is it, here and now. Letting go of a desire for it to be different. And then the teachings become all about this instead of what might be. So she says, if the dying person is unable to perform transference unaided, then the instructions in the first section of Liberation Through Hearing should be read aloud to help him or her accomplish the Dharmakaya transference during the bardo of dying. These instructions should be read aloud. Only if this is not successful need one continue to read the whole text with its instructions for the bardos of Dharmata and existence. The bardo of Dharmata, so there are these three main death bardos. The first is the bardo of dying, when you watch the elements like your earth and water and wind and air and fire all dissolve, and the body dissolves and you die. The second bardo is the bardo of Dharmata, when your consciousness enters the realm of reality. And there are specific instructions about what to do with that. The problem is that you're seeing, and when you enter the bar of Dharmata, you're sort of groundless. The ground has been taken out from under your feet. And you're looking at the one hand at the 6 realms, which are easier to look at. Their light is warm and soft. And you're also looking at the realms of reality of the Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya Buddhas. And they are hard to look at because their light is very bright. And the instruction is don't go towards the 6 realms because those are the realms of rebirth. Most people do. For most people, the bardo of Dharmata, which is what I'm talking about now, is just a finger snap. They hardly even notice it. And even when they do, they may not stay there for very long. Some people do. And if they do, they can achieve awakening. But if they don't, they will proceed towards the realms, the 6 realms, and enter the 3rd of the death bardos, which is, I don't know what he or she is calling it here in this text, but it's often called the bardo of becoming. This is the bardo in which you are beginning to take rebirth, and at the end of it, you do take rebirth. At the end of it, you see your mother and father copulating, and you enter the mother's womb and are reborn as a baby. She says, primarily this instruction is meant for all kinds of ordinary people who have received teaching, but although they are intelligent, have not recognized, or who have recognized, but did not become accustomed to meditation. And what meditation means here is resting in this, without looking for an alternative, without looking for an improvement. Resting in clear awareness of this. Does that sound disappointing? Difficult in a disappointing way? But difficult. Karen Sue's nodding her head to difficult. Yeah, difficult because we keep thinking it's got to be something different, something more, an improvement in me or the world. And what it's saying is that is suffering. That is confusion and ignorance. Yes, Karen Sue.
But the more I practice, the less I grasp.
Yes.
The more I'm here, which is for me is really freeing, because I'm not putting expectation or pressure, or my monkey mind isn't saying, am I getting it right? Gee, I don't know about this. So it's really it feels it's really hard for me to put into words, but it feels like home, and like I've been here before, and that this is it. But not it that I've been looking for, but just it. So it's really quite fascinating and profound.
All of that.
Yes. But I was going to say, but not easy, but you and Michael and this Sangha set the table for me every time we're together. I think that's a really good analogy for me. You set the table and allow me to sit and be. And much of everything drops away so that I can just be. So I'm really very, very, very grateful.
Me too. I think that one of the qualities that I've noticed developing is that a confidence, not a big, put on my chest confidence, but a surety that this is it and that I can relax into this. What an irony. I've been at this for 50 years and always thinking if I practice harder, if I go into retreat, if I get more advanced teachings, then I'll get it. And that ain't it. It's really a matter of recognition that we're already there, that this awareness that is unstoppable, going all the time, is it. And that we could revel, each one of us, in that.
I would say that you, John, and I said this just before, but I kind of feel like I need to say it again. That you, John, and Michael and Barry and the Sangha have just helped me allow and if I was missing any of those pieces, I wouldn't feel that that gentle confidence that you're talking about. I wouldn't feel that this is it. I think it's just it's like an eclipse. It's all lined up for me, and each moment that I spend with each of you adds to that brilliance, that wonderful experience. How lucky am I that I found you?
How lucky are we all?
Yes.
This is not my possession or Barry's or anybody's. It's like we're all tuning into this.
Mm-hmm.
As though we're a TV channel, We're all turning the dial to this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's Randy, magically appearing. And Kimberly. Yeah, the whole thing is so different. When you first start the path, you think, well, if I work hard, study, practice a lot, I'll get something. And what you're going to get is the notion that it's already been there all along, and that we can relax into it with humility and kindness for everybody. Michael, you look like you have something.
I was just thinking of I can't remember, I was going to look it up, but the T.S. Eliot poem, "We shall not cease from exploring until we come to know this." I can't remember the exact lines, but I don't think he was Buddhist, but it certainly expresses this idea that we go looking everywhere else, and ultimately it's right here.
Yeah.
We come to know this place for the very first time.
Yeah, for the very first time. Isn't that wonderful? So, she talks about how at the time of death, when one is naturally confused and frightened, it is particularly important not to arouse negative feelings such as dislike and suspicion. It is also important to have a calm and positive atmosphere. And for this reason, and this is an instruction that I've been listening to for years, and for this reason, the family should be kept away so that their grief and anxiety do not cause any disturbance. You know, the weeping and wailing of the family. And that'll make you feel like, oh God, something terrible is about to happen. And you don't want to have that. You don't want to communicate that to the person who is dying. Offerings should be made in the spirit of unbounded generosity, not only in material form, but also by imagining limitless offerings filling the whole universe. This creates the right state of mind for the final letting go of samsaric existence. The reading can even be done in the absence of the dying or dead person. Someone can read the Book of the Dead. You know, where is it? I've got it right here. In the absence of the person, you can read, they could be 1,000 miles away, and you can read this for them. And they will hear it because time and space are losing their meaning. Sitting on the dead person's better seat and proclaiming the power of truth, call on the departed consciousness, imagining that he or she is sitting before one listening, and read aloud. We should read this Book of the Dead. If you haven't yet read it, read it. It's really terrific. I'll just pick a spot and read a little bit here. O son of noble family, could be daughter. You know, all these books are written and then they get transformed into the male sex oftentimes. O son of noble family, beyond those Buddhas of the 5 families, the wrathful guardians of the gates will also appear. Vijaya, the victorious, Yamantaka, who I've got up here on my wall, destroyer, where's it, of death. Yeah. Yamantaka literally means conqueror of death. Hayagriva, the horse-necked one, and Amrita Kundali, coil of nectar, and the female guardians of the gates. He lists their names. Ankusha, the hook, Pasa, the noose, Srinikala, the chain, and Ganta, the bell. The 6 sages of the blessed ones will also appear. Indra, of the 100 sacrifices, sage of the gods, and so forth. He lists them all. All good father and mother of all Buddhas will also appear. These 42 deities of the Sambhogakaya will emerge from the wisdom of your own heart and appear before you. This is the bardo of Dharmata. Remember, after you've actually died and you enter in the bardo of Dharmata, if you don't just sort of snap through it, and they will appear before you. They are the pure form of your projections, so recognize them. Those realms, too, do not exist anywhere else, but lie in the 4 directions of your heart, with the center as 5th. And now they emerge from within your heart and appear before you. Those images, too, do not come from anywhere else, but are the primordial spontaneous play of your mind. So recognize them in this way. And it goes on about their colors and so forth, their posture, their throne, their symbol. The whole mandala, the male and female deities of the families, will appear completely in death, all at once, if you have the eyes to see. Recognize them, for they are your yidams. They are your tutelary deities. They are your expressions of enlightened mind, and they're calling you to enlightenment. And all of this is there when you die. Most people don't see it. They just snap right through it into the last of the death bardos, which is the bardo of becoming, in which you see yourself as a 6 or 7-year-old child and eventually see your parents copulating and enter the mother's womb. But before that, if you have practiced enough, if you have recognized that this is truly it, you can experience the bardo of Dharmata and even awaken completely, achieve enlightenment. There are these three opportunities in the death bardos for achieving enlightenment with increasing difficulty. The first is at the moment of death, when the red bindu, the gray bindu, and the black bindu unite at the heart. You can, at that moment, achieve complete, utter enlightenment. Most people don't. If at that moment you've practiced enough, you will snap through that into the bardo of Dharmata, which is the second and lesser opportunity to achieve enlightenment. You see the peaceful and wrathful deities, and you also see the six realms, and you will be drawn toward the realms because they're easier to look at. If you don't, if you stay in the bardo of Dharmata, it's also called the Cheni bardo in Tibetan, or the bardo of reality, you can achieve enlightenment. But if you're drawn to the realms, then you're going to enter the six realms again, like we're in the human realm now, and once again go through a lifetime. This is the path that's being drawn out. I really recommend reading this book. And what Francesca's pointing out is that when a person is dying, you can read them the Book of the Dead as they lie there in death, or before death, death and in dying and then in death. You can read this to them. It's instructional. It says the reading can even be done in the absence of the dying or dead person. You can read it aloud. For an experienced practitioner, distance presents no problem, since mind itself has no physical location. Lamas can make a connection to someone who is dying or has just died, even when they are far away, helping to effect transference. And I have made, and there are others of my friends who have made monetary contributions to lamas in Tibet to read the Book of the Dead and to do transference for people who are dying. A kind of transference takes place whenever we allow our minds to be turned away from the ordinary concerns and elevated onto another plane of awareness. Michael, do you recommend, remember when we have made contributions for people going to Tibet or in Tibet to do, to read the Book of the Dead and to do transference, POA? You can do transference for someone else. You can help them transfer their consciousness out the Brahmaranda and into a Pure Land. There are lamas who do this. There's one in Denver who does it all the time. He's famous for it. His name is Onion Rinpoche. Michael, you had something?
Yeah, it just seems like, and I think what she's talking about in this part of the Tibetan Book of the Dead is in reading the text, we're just reminding people of what's possible, reminding them that they could recognize their mind, that they could, if they've had some training or practice, that they could do the transference, but that it really comes down to recognizing mind, recognizing the nature of mind. Mark had his hand raised for a while. I don't know if there was a question he wanted to ask or.
Mark.
It's not really related to the reading of the Book of the Dead so much as when it talks about our desire to be awakened and how that can have samsaric consequences. And I don't know where, but I remember this simple, just that our travel begins on the meditation pillow and it ends on the meditation pillow. And I think that to me is very comforting, and that it's that simplicity that we don't understand, and yet we do experience this wonderful thing. And it is as simple as that, isn't it? And that's what the ultimate, I guess that is a question.
Yeah, it helps if a teacher who is capable of showing you the nature of your mind has pointed it out to you. That is a great, great help.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
It says here, transference must not be attempted too soon, before death, as that would be tantamount to committing suicide. The best time is when respiration is just about to stop, before the final stages of inner dissolution have taken place.
Mm-hmm.
But if transference is not accomplished at this stage, the instructions for the bardo of dying should be given. As the text explains, as soon as respiration has stopped the breathing, all prana is absorbed into the avaduti. It's the central channel that runs all the way from the top of your head down to the chakra 4 finger breadths below the navel. All prana, as soon as respiration is stopped, all prana, all wind, is absorbed into the avaduti, and luminosity, free from complexities, shines clearly in the consciousness. This is a decisive moment, for it is at this point that most people black out into unconsciousness. Before this occurs, the teacher or friend should prepare the dying person by saying, "O child of awakened family, now the time has come for you to seek the path. As soon as your outer breath stops, the basic luminosity of the first bardo, which your guru has already pointed out, will dawn upon you. It is the dharmata." He's talking about this Chandi bardo, actually. Empty and open as space, a pure naked awareness, clear and empty, without center or circumference. At that moment, you yourself should recognize it and rest in that state, and I too will point it out to you at the same time. Yeah. He says, for those who need more assistance, the whole sequence of the dissolution of the elements should be read aloud so that the dying person understands what is happening. Liberation through hearing, that's this book, the Book of the Dead, gives only a brief indication of this process. Quote, "Now the sign of earth dissolving into water is present, water into fire, fire into air, air into consciousness." And I keep quoting a text I read a long time ago by the Dalai Lama saying that he contemplated this daily because he didn't want to be surprised. It's 6:45. I think we're going to wind up doing this chapter again next week. Maybe we should read some of the chapter. It's really, the book, it's really terrific. Wonderful read. I'd say skip the commentary and just read the book. Book of the Dead. And with any luck, it will be read to you when you're dying. Instructional manual. We could all volunteer. Who wants to have the Book of the Dead read to them when they're dying? Karen Sue does, Val, Dan, Vicky. Yeah. Maybe we should make a list.
I found it an audiobook as well.
Oh, an audio. That's great.
Bob Thurman's translations in the audiobook too. Is an audiobook.
Say what, Dan?
Bob Thurman's translations is an audiobook as well.
Yeah, I was reading it. I was thinking of just coming in here tonight and reading the Book of the Dead, and we discuss it as we go. You could do that. It's very rich as it describes all the different stages of the falling away of this life. Anybody else? If not, I'm wondering if we should just end early.
Shinyi?
Hi. Questions just came to mind. I'm wondering, maybe this is more a question for John and Michael. Did Trungpa Rinpoche ever give any instructions on what to do for his students when they die, or kind of provide any specific instructions on kind of whether to practice for the dying person themselves or like people, Sangha members around that person who are assisting with the transition?
I don't know of any instructions. Do you, Michael?
I'm trying to remember the introduction that he wrote to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I think there's some things in there about, in a very general sense, if I'm remembering correctly. But I should probably look, and we could talk about it maybe tomorrow night. Just give everyone a good reason to come if you can. But basically it's similar to what I recollect, the things that are kind of similar to what we read in here, that the state of mind of the dying person is very important. So you want someone to be able to approach death with as much fearlessness and ability to let go as they can experience, and that develops out of practice. That it's good to have a peaceful, supportive environment around the person, which is why I think in this book she said something about not having family around, because a great deal of too much emotionality just makes it harder to let go. It's harder to let go, and that's really what the person has to do at that point. I mean, people can only do what you can do, but the idea is to have as peaceful and supportive an environment as possible, to try to remember things like loving kindness and compassion toward all beings, to remember the Guru.
It says here, according to the sequence of dissolutions, when the sequence of dissolutions is almost complete, the dissolving of the body and so forth, the dying person is urged to remain fully awake and attentive. O child of awakened family, do not let your thoughts wander. Then he or she is reminded to arouse the attitude of bodhicitta, the awakened heart and mind, and to meditate in this way. Here, and it says, I have arrived at the time of death. Now, since I am dying, I will think of nothing but the awakened heart, love, and compassion, and attain perfect enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings as limitless as space. With this attitude, especially at this time for the sake of all beings, I will recognize the luminosity of death as Dharmakaya. Within that state, I will attain the supreme accomplishment of Mahamudra and act for the good of all beings. If I do not succeed, then I will recognize the Bardo when I enter it. I will manifest the Mahamudra Bardo body of inseparable appearance and emptiness, and act for the good of all beings as limitless as space, appearing in whatever way will benefit each of them. So that's your aspiration at death. Bodhicitta. Death is really comes and goes. At the moment, it's very big in my mind because I just went to a Sukhavati for a close friend a few days ago, held at Dorje Zung. And I went and touched his body where he lay in the casket wrapped in silks, and his face was uncovered. And I had been seeing him about every 4 to 6 weeks in his nursing home for about the last year or two. So it's very powerful. Any other departing remarks? If not, we can do the chants. We could all make a vow to be thinking of each other as we go.
Should we do the closing chants then?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So we'll close by dedicating the merit generated through our practice and study for the benefit of all sentient beings. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Everyone. No,
We should stop the recording.
we should stop what?
Recording.
Oops.